1 year too late. A priceless baseball of memories. Take a moment to imagine a man who refuses to go to the hospital while he is having a heart attack, just because he does not want to ruin Christmas Eve. A man who is smoking while he is in the car on the way to the hospital. A man that did not fear death in the slightest. We knew this man as Grampy. Although the person you are probably picturing is a mean old grumpy man, Grampy was quite the opposite. He was loved by almost everyone he met, and had a very kind heart. Dad always talks about the memories he has of him. Whenever he talks about him, you can tell that it is like he is reliving the moment with his father. Mom also chimes in occasionally, telling me and my sister how much Grampy would have loved us. I was never able to meet Grampy, though, because he died a year before I was adopted. It has always been a wish of mine that I could have met him. Learning more about him, though, makes me feel as if I really did. At the funeral, Dad was interested in what different people knew him as. To people who worked for him, he was known as John. Friends of my dad's mother's side of the family knew him as Mac. To his side of the family, he was known as Jackie. It was surprising to my dad to hear all these different names that referred to his father. They all took different form, ranging from formal to friendly. Dad and Mom always referred to him as Grampy, though, along with most of our family. Even those in our family that never met him still know how great of a person he was. Dad's two sisters are the same when it comes to talking about Grampy. They sing things that make you believe that he was a god among men. Grampy was only 5'6" and weighed 140 pounds. Although Grampy was a small guy in stature, he compensated for that with his personality. Like a little dog with lots of bite, Grampy was a tough little man who was not afraid of just anything. Lots of this came from how he grew up. When he was very young, his dad walked out on his family. This meant that Grampy spent his childhood with no real fatherly figure in his life. He was not the best kid in school and got in lots of trouble. Grampy was not able to graduate from high school and did not go to college until later in life. The company he worked for was Sweetheart Plastics, and he was a manager there. He worked there for a total of 20 years until he was offered a better job, where he was promised the vice president position of the company. Unfortunately, the company did not uphold their promise and was fired once they were finished with him. Luckily, Grampy was a tough man and was able to move on from this event. This is John, opening the door to the factory filled with machines and people alike working hard at work. The factory is quite a hot environment, and sweat drips from his curly, partially grayed hair. Machines are roaring in the background as he observes people working the lines. He is making sure that everything is well in order. He walks around for a little bit, talking to each of the workers before going to do some work of his own. The smell of the factory is not the most pleasant in the world. It smells like a combination of sweaty workers and burning rubble from the machines. John's main job was to make sure everything went smoothly in the factory. He was supervisor, which is the same position as a manager would have. It took John lots of hard work and dedication to get to the position he held in the company. This makes me think of how hard-working he was. I find it to be one of the most defining qualities he had, even though I never knew him. Dad is a big New England sports fan, just like Grampy was. A big moment for my dad was when the Red Sox won the World Series, because Grampy had never been able to watch them win once while he was alive. When they won, his uncle called him because he knew Grampy would have. It was nice for Dad to receive this call because it reminded him so much of his own dad. Another big factor was the fact that I was there with him too. Dad was overjoyed that he was able to share such a big moment with his son. Even though I do not remember this, I cherished it because of how happy it made him. Back when Dad was just a junior in high school, Grampy took him to a special baseball dinner banquet and game at which he met many famous sports celebrities. Dad was just a scrawny kid with reddish hair that had a dream of being a professional sports announcer. He talked about this and said, "I talked to a famous baseball coach who asked me if I wanted to play baseball when I was older, to which I responded that I wanted to be an announcer. He then proceeded to throw me over to one of the most famous sports announcers of all time. This blew him away. This day was also the exact day that Grampy died 18 years later. It reminds my dad of how I came to the United States on the same day that it was Grampy's birthday. He says it is a bittersweet day for him, because he is reminded of Grampy, but also is reminded of when I came into our family." At the dinner, Dad had a baseball that he had signed by many different famous players. The baseball that my dad had gotten from that is one of the most precious things that he owns to this day. At one point, though, our dog Bubba got a hold of the ball and chewed it up. When this happened, it definitely took some of the actual value from the ball. That is not why it is precious to my dad, though. This baseball is not high in value just because of the signatures of famous baseball players written on it. It is high in value because it is like a piece of Grampy that my dad always has to remember it by. The baseball holds the memories of an amazing day that my dad had with his own father. This is more precious than any price could offer. Someday he hopes to pass the baseball on to me. It holds all the memories of him and Grampy at that dinner banquet and game. I know that I will remember both my dad and Grampy by it someday, when he is not around anymore. A really big memory my dad had was that Grampy had reconciled with his own dad. Grampy's siblings had originally convinced him that his father had passed away before he was born. When his mother died, though, his dad made an appearance at the funeral, which was very confusing. Over a period of time, Grampy eventually forgave his dad for walking out on his family. His brother, however, stayed upset at the entire situation and never really forgave him. This created indifference within the family, and sadly, they never talked to each other after. When Grampy passed, it was not much of a surprise to anyone. He had been struggling with heart problems for many years. The first heart attack he had was when he was around the age of 38. There had been lots of history with his heart problems, and in the past he had a surgery on his heart that extended his life longer than what it would have been. There had also been lots of family history with heart disease. His mother had died from a heart attack at a young age. Another contributor was that he had also smoked cigars since his teenage years. Even though he knew it was close to his time, Grampy was never afraid of dying. The entire reason that my dad moved to Ohio was because he did not believe that Grampy would live through another Christmas. Something that my dad always did for the last couple years Grampy was alive was he would say goodbye like it was the last time he would see him. He was always fearful of when the last time he would see him would be. His family knew that Grampy was close to the end of his life. Sadly, the last time my dad saw Grampy was the one time he did not say goodbye, as if it was the last time. Grampy always wanted to just make it to the year 2000. Although my dad did not think he would make it another year, he made it 8 more years than what was predicted. Even though this was much more than expected, he still did not make it. He died in January of 1999. This is the same year in which I was born. At the funeral, Grampy was remembered by many as a great man for different reasons. Dying at the age of 58, he had lived a fairly full life. Grampy achieved most of his dreams by working hard for what he wanted. A big dream that he never saw through, though, was the dream of retiring and going down to Florida in the winters. His favorite song, which was almost played at the funeral, was My Way by Frank Sinatra. The first verse of the song reads, "And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that is full. I've traveled each and every highway and more, much, much more than this. I did it my way." I feel that this perfectly fits the type of person that Grampy was. He always wanted to do things his way, which is where some of his stubborn demeanor stemmed from. For me, the saddest thing is thinking about all I missed out on by not meeting Grampy. If he had just lived another year or two longer, or if I had been born earlier, I could have had the chance to meet him. After hearing all the great things about him, I know that we would have gotten along very well. Grampy was stationed in Japan for a long time while serving time in the military. My parents always tell me that he would have loved me because he loved Asian people from being over there so long. A chance to meet Grampy would have meant the world to me. Grampy, I hope that I did you enough justice while telling your story. Learning all about you from Dad was a really good way of feeling closer to you without even knowing you. There was so much I did not know about you, and it all fascinated me tremendously. Even though you never knew me to begin with, I am sure you would be proud of the young man I feel I have become. The Patriots are doing great this year, along with the Red Sox. Dad wishes that you could have seen them as a winning team while you were still alive. I still wish that you were around because of all the great times we would have had together. Hopefully I will someday meet you up above when my own time comes. In theory, that will be a while from now, but I look forward to it. Thank you for allowing me the honor of writing about you. I look forward to the day we finally meet.